Alright folks, in this video we're going to be talking about two topics. We'll be talking about the Amazon River and about indigenous people that live in the, near or on the Amazon River. Alright, so let's begin with the Amazon River. First off, the Amazon River begins high in the Andes Mountains of Peru. Remember in the last chapter we talked about the Andes Mountains? Well, the Amazon River starts high up in the mountains thanks to the glaciers. Now, the Amazon River is 3,915 miles long, and it flows from east to west into the Atlantic Ocean. So if you look at the picture with the map on the right, the one that's the river that's in dark blue, the one that I'm kind of trying to outline, that's the Amazon River, and it eventually flows out into the Atlantic Ocean. So, very large river, and then these little ones that kind of look like veins are the tributaries. Alright, now this river is the second longest river in the world, being beaten by the Nile. However, but according to the volume of water, that means the amount of water that they have, it actually has more water than the Nile, Mississippi, and the Yangtze rivers combined. Now the Yangtze is a river in China, but the amount of water that the Amazon River is more than all three of those combined. And the reason why this is possible is due to the 1,000 tributaries that drain into the Amazon. Remember, in the previous slide I mentioned tributaries, and tributaries are smaller rivers that drain into a larger river. So you can kind of see, as I outline here, these tributaries drain into the Amazon River, and they kind of look like little veins or branches into the Amazon. So, those are tributaries. Alright, now, every year the Amazon floods due to the snow melt on the Andes Mountains and the heavy rainfall during the rainy season. So during those are two reasons why the Amazon River floods: the rains and the snow melt. Now, with these floodwaters, they deposit rich minerals that actually can help support the biodiversity and helps the people of the Amazon. So, obviously over here in these pictures on the left and the right, you see examples of the Amazon flooding, and I've also shown you some pictures of what happens when the Amazon floods. Now, let's switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about the indigenous people that live in the Amazon. Alright, most indigenous people of the Amazon basin or the Amazon rainforest live much like they did in the past. And what that means is that most of these people were nomadic, which means that they travel from place to place, many times following their food sources. They hunted, or they gathered, so gathering fruits and vegetables that grew naturally in the forest, or seeing as the Amazon River is a source of fresh water, they also fish, and the Amazon River has a lot of fish that you can find. If you look at the picture that I'm kind of outlining here, it's very common to see people dressed like this individual here. They wear very little clothing because they don't feel the need to wear it. They don't have modern technology, so that no electricity, no air conditioning, no Wi-Fi, gas, no modern plumbing and things like that. It's almost like they still live like they did 12,000 years ago. Now, let's continue. There are some small farms there, so some will farm small plots of land, but surprisingly, the Amazon actually has poor farmland due to having too much rain. And it seems counterproductive, but because there's so much rain and because of the flooding, their crops or their soil isn't very good. Now, just how crazy is this? There are over 400 different tribes within the Amazon. I mean, last I checked, there were about 10 million people that make up these indigenous tribes. and each one of them speaks a different language, has different customs, and so forth. So it makes it very, very hard to communicate with them. Unfortunately, the governments in the 1960s decided to build roads, farms, ranches, and even towns, forcing the indigenous people to lose much of their territory. So the Brazilian government thought it was a good idea to basically give away or sell a lot of the rainforest land that natives lived on. And this is just an example of what happened. And usually because the natives didn't speak the language or understand the rules and things like that, they got taken advantage of. And this really this hurt the indigenous people in a number of different ways. This really hurt the indigenous people of the areas because many actually died from diseases brought by newcomers. Something that's very common with these tribes is because they have not been exposed, or due to not having exposure to common illnesses. Many tribes, even to this day, have no contact with the modern world. A disease as simple as the common cold can actually kill a person from the Amazon. And a big reason why is because their bodies haven't developed an immunity to these diseases or illnesses that we've seen for hundreds of years. That's kind of why I have a sick emoji, because the indigenous people do get sick, and a quarantine, which means that you aren't allowed to come into contact with them. And this is unfortunate. And this is very unfortunate. Now, due to with all these problems that indigenous natives have to deal with, many have actually decided to modernize in order to better defend themselves, or to kind of get. I lost it. But they're doing three things. One, learning new languages. Usually, they'll tend to learn Spanish and Portuguese, because those are the languages that are spoken primarily in South America. They decide to go to school, which is a big one. Is if they go to school, they can be more educated, they can read, and they can communicate better with the people that they come in contact with. And then last but not least, they're learning about the laws. They're learning about the laws. This way, they don't get taken advantage of, they don't get ripped off, and they don't get a lot of their land stolen from them. So those three things will actually help them in the long run. Now, let's backtrack a little bit and go back to talk about the Amazon River. Now, one thing that's very interesting about the Amazon River is that it is believed that the river was given its name by the Spanish explorer Francisco de Orellana. Now, a lot of people speculate or wonder why he called it the Amazon. Well, story goes is that Orellana actually came across some indigenous people, and the indigenous people they encountered actually fought back against the Spanish, and they were surprised to see that indigenous women were actually fighting alongside men. And because at the time in Europe, women were seen as people that needed to be at home with the children and so forth. So for the Spanish to see women fighting alongside men, it was something new to them, and it actually reminded them of the ancient Greek, the ancient warriors women of Greece, who were trained warriors by heart. One of the more famous Amazons now would be, for example, Wonder Woman. They were seen as very strong, very big women at the time. So that's who discovered the Amazon, and that's why the Amazon is named the way it's. That's why it has its name, is because of the Amazon warriors. So that is what we have. Like I said, we talked about the Amazon River. And we've talked about the indigenous people of the Amazon. And last but not least, we briefly touched on who discovered the Amazon. Now, just like always, make sure you answer those questions. And if you have any difficulty or any question regarding any questions, just email me on it, text me on Edmodo, and we should be good. Alright guys, that's it for now. See you on Monday.